Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Northern Showcase. We look forward to spending the next hour with you. I'm Penny Olorenshaw, a former stage manager, now a Webflow developer in Trenton, Ontario, and I handle communications for No Code North.
Hi, I'm Maggie Monso. I'm a Webflow developer based in Toronto with a background in film and television. In our No Code North group, I take care of our designs and our gather space.
And I'm Jeremy LaRue, a Webflow and low-code developer from Vancouver. On the No Code North team, I am the resident automations guy and the stream runner.
Our mission at No Code North is twofold. First, to build a community of Canadian Webflowers and no-code enthusiasts. And second, to showcase Canadian talent to the rest of the world. We hold workshops, demos, and panel discussions on Fridays at noon Eastern in our lodge, our gather space, and once a month, we host the Northern Showcase here on our YouTube channel.
So let's see who's joining us today in the chat. Hey, Dale and Tony's here, and Nancy. Say hey if you're in the chat. So
Tony's here too,
and Corey's here. Heyo.
Hey.
So if you have any questions for our guests, put them in the chat, and we will either kind of fill them in the interview, or we have room for Q&A at the end.
Today, we're joined by Chris Abra. Chris has over 15 years of experience as an entrepreneur, specializing in technology, design, and web platforms. Part owner of a screen printing and custom clothing company in Victoria, he builds systems that help automate business processes, allowing him to focus on higher-level projects. Now a freelance Webflow designer and self-coined tech generalist, Chris assists small businesses and startups in leveraging technology and systems to achieve growth. He's proficient in a wide range of tools, including, of course, Webflow, but also Airtable and Zapier. Zapier? Please help us welcome Chris to the Northern Showcase.
Hey, Chris.
Hey.
Welcome.
Hey. How do you pronounce it?
Zapier. I heard, I listened to an interview. Zapier makes you happier is how you got to remember.
Oh, yeah. It's like GIF, eh? There's always
Cool. It's a little warmer there where you are than some places in Canada, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's about 20 degrees Celsius. I can't do my Fahrenheit conversions for any Americans on the stream, but yeah, it's nice and sunny out here today.
Good.
Yeah, it's been good. Well, Chris and I had the pleasure of going down to Webflow Conf, actually in a very unique way. We met up with Tony Seats and Corey Flowman at Tony's, and we took an RV down to Webflow Conf last October. And on our first stop, something kind of happened, and so I'm just going to kind of let Chris take over the story, and I'll add some visual color to it when it comes to the point. But I think Chris, you should set the
Yeah. So it was kind of a weird it was pre-Halloween, so there was we were at a Benbow KOA like campground, and I went into the lodge to go to the washroom, and I walked into the bathroom, and just on quick glance, it's like, oh, there's someone in that stall. I'm going to go in this one. Do my business, whatever. As I'm walking out, I'm washing my hands, and I kind of look in the mirror, and I noticed that like the feet that I thought on quick glance whereas a pair of maybe flip-flops or something, just like, I was like, wait a minute, no, those are weird clown shoes. And so I book it out of there, kind of freaked out, go back to like the group of guys and was like, tell them this happened. And none of them believed me really until Jeremy came back with me to suss out the situation. And we realized someone was probably playing a little prank on us and had just placed a pair of giant clown shoes as props in there.
terrifying.
But yeah, in the middle of the night, and if I remember correctly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think anybody besides me was willing to take a shower in that bathroom after that point.
Yeah.
Because there was still no taking chances, like even after like the next, because the shoes were they there the next morning, or was I don't know what it was. Like it was definitely creepy, but no, we didn't believe you. I was waiting for you to like jump scare me when we went in.
No.
We went in. But we that was the first night, and then we made it down to Webflow Conf. That was a fun experience, and just going down. And thanks to Tony again and his wife for having us over the first night, and then also just hanging out in the RV. That was a great.
Yeah, it was an awesome way to get down there.
Yeah,
much better than just taking a flight.
Yes.
Yeah, and many more stories. It was great to hear all your stories once you arrived and shared, what the adventure had been. And I hear there's a website somewhere that documents the trip too. So.
Does it still exist? I know Tony's out there, so
I
was trying to find it.
Domain for it.
I think but I don't know if I don't even know if the Webflow is the Webflow IO for that one still around, Tony, because I'd love to pop it up.
Yeah, partially documented. Yeah. Not great at that part. Well, the beginning part was really good. Anyway.
All right.
Cool.
Well, I guess we'll start the main part of the interview here and say bye to Maggie and Penny for a second. Bye.
Have fun.
Bye.
Oh, he's still paying for hosting and the domain. Why I couldn't find it. If you want to toss it in the chat, Tony, I'm sure people would love to check it out. But we do have to get past that fun RV thing to, maybe introduce more about you. One thing that as we do, we kind of like cyber stalk people for these things, for lack of a better term. And in some cases, you're like very active, or not so active, actually. You're present, but I wouldn't say you're like the most active on some of the social media stuff. So it was like, I'm doing some deep digging for some of this. But on your LinkedIn, what was the first clue is you have a bunch of volleyball information. And I didn't even know that about you. So could you tell us a bit about your volleyball experience and how that all ties in?
Yeah, I think that's kind of like my foray into entrepreneurship was I played volleyball growing up in high school, played in college, got into coaching. But I ended up getting an opportunity to, there was a guy locally who was running a volleyball, like an association that ran adult leagues and kids programs and stuff like that. And he was a teacher who was taking a contract overseas, and he kind of he wanted the association to keep going, wanted to find someone young and who had the energy and was passionate about, growing the game. And so that's kind of where I first stepped into taking kind of into like that entrepreneurship world. And so I took over that. I actually ran it for over a decade, and then I sold it in 2021. But then through that, I met a lot of people. I got involved with, it was part of like the way I was able to start getting involved with a screen printing company that my friend had started. It gave me a side hustle so that I could justify spending time on this other thing that was also kind of a side hustle for me, and mashing those two things together and really digging into how do we build businesses and how do we leverage technology to help make our businesses more efficient than they probably are, or make us seem more efficient than we possibly are, or do more with, less hands on deck at the start when you're just kind of getting things going.
Right. And like, not to undersell it, but like you were assistant coach for like your college. Mm-hmm. You were also part of Volleyball Canada. Like, so mm-hmm. like you had a lot of experience like on that coaching side of things, right? Like,
yeah,
as well as the organization of like taking over that, which is an interesting way. So did you, from what I was like reading, because the other thing that I dug up was like these old Medium posts, which kind of are interesting because they give you like this insight into like how you approach things and whatnot. And you kind of referred to yourself as a builder and a breaker. And so is that something that's always been there for you as far as like wanting to tinker around with different things?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I wouldn't say like when I wasn't always like crazy into technology, but we always had a computer in our house. My dad was an educator, so we always got that Mac discount growing up. So I've had all of the Macs, the bad ones, the good ones, like, yeah. And so I was always playing around with different things in that way. When I was in something you probably can't find on the internet now is like when I was in grade 12, I ran for student council president with my buddy, and I made us a website on, I think it was on GeoCities or Tripod. And so like I was kind of like I was stepping outside my comfort zone a lot more than a lot of my friends were in the tech space, but I don't think I really got super into it until that kind of that impetus of like starting to take on these business things and being like, oh, I can actually kind of like leverage technology and leverage my enthusiasm for trying new tools and systems and stuff to kind of like step my own game up.
Right. And because in the Medium post, I guess the Medium post, they started with Passion Sports, and that's the screen printing company, right? Like it started quite small, and I know you were the CTO, but as you were explaining in it, you're like, I wasn't the most technical person. I was just a few levels ahead of like where everybody else was, but you seemed very interested in figuring it out and making those systems kind of better for everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a combination of when we were just getting going, it was like my buddy who like started it, his wife and his brother were like the three who were there, and I was the first, first non-family member person kind of involved in the business, and it was everyone was kind of just finding their niche, right? Like it was all hands on deck. Everyone's helping out with some sales. Everyone's helping out with this. When some printing needed, I mean, I didn't do a ton of printing, but I'd step in and help out when boxing, shipping, whatever. But everyone still slowly started to find their niche of like what they were good at and what their skill set could be applied best to. And that's kind of where I started to kind of like pigeonhole myself into this kind of inexperienced CTO role for the company of building our websites, building our back-end kind of systems, and starting to try to automate things so that we could grow at a faster rate than we might have been able to.
And what were some of the tools that you were finding useful, like even back then when you were just starting on this kind of exploring the tech?
Yeah, I think I started, I mean, websites, we were all WordPress. I tried all the builders, Divi, Elementor, all that stuff. And then in terms of automations, I think I was early days, I was using the IFTTT, if this, then that. It's like a precursor to Zapier. I think it still exists, and it's more of a consumer, like it does a lot of stuff with like Internet of Things type, turn on your lights when this happens and that type of stuff. But so I was trying to leverage it from our point of view, where it's like, hey, we could like submit a form and then it could send an email to this one thing, and like kind of like building these little pieces together that didn't necessarily work cohesively, but they worked to like funnel information to the right people in a somewhat more efficient way. And then I discovered Airtable, and I think that was kind of I love Airtable still, but like at that point it was when I figured out Airtable and I figured out how to use Zapier with it, and I could build an entire like production management system that it's still to this day technically runs our entire production for a company that prints millions of dollars worth of custom apparel. And with Zapier connected to different email services and stuff like that, it automates so much stuff that would take that just takes tasks off people's plates so that they can focus on the things that we need humans to do.
Yeah, I think that's that the automations is that sweet spot for automations is taking away those repetitive tasks that nobody actually really wants to do anyway.
Yeah.
And saves you a ton of time and gives you like the more time to have that interpersonal things. One of the things that I'm going back to, I know like ancient days with the old Medium posts, so you're gonna have to forgive me because that's what I found them really interesting because I really was able to, I think, get an understanding of a lot of the philosophies of what you're doing and even how that changed over a bit of the time. But you had an interesting one about sales and like you're basically not getting sales through cold calling. Like, and so how did that work for you?
I think at the time, like we were focused a lot on just providing the best possible experience for people. Like the reason that the business came into place was, you know, my buddy Greg had started a basketball camp, running his own basketball camps in the summer. And he'd gone to a local screen printer to get his shirts for his camp and just found the experience like excruciatingly painful. Like getting quotes took days, approving, you know, like everything was just so slow. And that at some point he was like, you know what, I'm just going to buy my first screen press and do these myself because it can't possibly be as painful as this is. And so I think that it was man, I kind of lost my train of thought there where I was going with that.
Well, just how the I guess the cold calling.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That thing
Right.
about the post.
So building something that was made it easy for people. People loved recommending us in those early days, and so I think what I really focused on at the time, we do more cold calling now. Our salespeople, I didn't really love it. I was more about just networking with the right people, getting the right people who had a great experience with us to just like, hey, tell a couple friends that you had a great experience with us and maybe we can get in the door. And then when we got those right connections, it was like making sure that you provided like a top level, white glove level experience for them. And even if a mistake happened, you handled it in the right way. And I think that was a way that we just drove organic growth for our company at the time without having to, you know, I'm not saying Greg loves doing sales. And so he was definitely out there reaching out, but I just kind of went about it my own way of like, if I can provide a great experience and great knowledge and that type of thing, and just get the right connections, I can kind of grow it a different way, I would say.
Yeah, well, I mean, it worked out well for you. You became, you know, as far as the sales at the time, you were, you know, very easily in the second slot of sales, and you were bringing them in. You said it took a while because building things organically takes time, right?
Totally.
So even sales and everything else like that. Do you still use methods like that, or are you like switch to including cold calling and stuff?
I don't do any of that cold calling stuff. I don't like it. I mean, like, I think if you like you said, I'm not super active on social. Like I try to engage with people when I can, but like it's not something that I'm just like, I don't know. It's not part of my DNA is to just like reach out to random people and try to get business. So in the end, I do, you know, a lot of like what I'm working on right now is through my network of people that I've worked with over the years. And it's like, I've done what I would hope that they would say is great work for them. And therefore they've recommended me to this person or connected me with this person, or just even, you know, name dropped me at some point being like, oh, I got a great like web guy or a great tech guy who helps me out with that type of stuff. And then, so I think that those principles still do kind of apply in a different way.
Yeah, no, that is, I think everybody has their own way of doing things. I mean, and there is no right or wrong way. I don't think in a lot of cases for, you know, it doesn't work for everyone. We're different people, so we have things that work for us, right?
For sure.
I was curious of like all of the time that you spent like with volleyball, because people say like team sports and sports in general, which is like I haven't had this kind of experience, but a lot of people have said like these are kind of formative things on like how somebody lives the rest of their life, or they pick up you know, things from that time and they carry those lessons through. Are there kind of like any lessons that overlap between like what you were doing with volleyball and what you were taking into business?
Yeah, I mean, I think like volleyball being a very team sport. I mean, we were talking about it just before the call about little kids playing volleyball, and it's like you can't just have one good player because, you know, that person can only touch the ball once until someone else touches it. And so I think it is very much a team sport, in the way of, you know, you have to get along with people, you have to work together to accomplish a goal. And especially when you get up to the higher levels of collegiate volleyball and stuff like that. So I think obviously getting to work with people and, you know, understanding how to balance your kind of personality and the way you like to work with people who have completely different personalities or completely different kind of methods of how they get things done is definitely key. And then on the other side of things, I think, you know, playing it as I got to like the higher level, I think a lot of what I got out of it was the ability to time manage things. It's like, I'm going to school, I'm practicing 4 days a week, playing. So like practicing Monday to Thursday, playing Friday and Saturday. We had weight training sessions. You know, there's all this stuff going on in addition to still have, you know, 4 or 5 classes that you have to go to and do your homework for and study for. And then also like try to have a bit of a social life like people do in university. And so like figuring out how to balance all those things, I think has paid massive dividends in the rest of my life in terms of, you know, going from that into having a few different kind of side hustles that kind of make my whole thing to getting to the point now where it's like where I'm working with multiple clients at the same time on different projects and knowing how to balance my time of like, what do I need to get done? When does it need to be done? And what do I also need to do to kind of set myself up for success on this other thing that doesn't need to be done until a little bit later?
So you started with WordPress as like, well, actually no, like more like GeoCities, and
yeah.
like I totally relate.
Yeah.
Angel Fire and GeoCities and
put a little marquee tag on something and have it scroll across the page. Yeah, it was beautiful.
But when did you make the transition from WordPress? When, you know, it was Webflow the next thing, or did you like try other what you get builders? We started in WordPress. We dabbled in Shopify a little bit, but didn't at the time. I think Shopify does have more tools for bulk sales now, but at the time it was really meant for selling you a t-shirt, not selling you 10 t-shirts with your logo on it, right? So we like kind of dabbled there and then ended up going back to WordPress. I probably rebuilt our website like almost every year in WordPress when I'd find a new page builder or something cool that I needed to integrate into the site. And then I found Webflow in probably, I think it was like 2018, kind of dabbled, but was still kind of like, I didn't have a ton of time at the time to really like dive into it full. And then I actually went to the first the first Webflow conf that was called No Code Conf. But I actually kind of ended up going there, not because of the Webflow side of things, even though they were the ones who were hosting it. I was more into this whole Zapier Airtable maker space thing. And I heard like a bunch of people were going to this thing. I was like, I gotta know this. This sounds like my people, like building things in Airtable, you know. And so I went down to that, and everyone there was awesome. It was like, it was similar to like Webflow Conf now. It's like similar people, super nice, willing to share ideas. But I was like, man, they keep talking about this Webflow like it's like some sort of come to Jesus moment or something. And so then like when I got back, I was like, okay, I need to like sit down and spend some time on that. And then I've basically been all in on Webflow since then. Yeah, the Book of Mormon with the overflows with Webflow on it.
Yeah, exactly.
That one is it definitely feels like that sometimes. And then I guess from there, understanding how it could work in your stack, you haven't looked back since fully jumping on Webflow.
No, I try to like do everything I can to avoid WordPress. I moved everything off WordPress like as fast as I could build new, like, because at the time I would have had our screen printing company site, I had the volleyball company's association site, and I think my one other site for like a friend that I was kind of managing. And I was like, as fast as I can build these and rebuild these in Webflow, I am getting these off of WordPress. And so from that point on, I've tried to touch WordPress as little as possible, except for the odd migration with a client.
There was another. I'm going back to the Medium post because one of the ones that you had was that the evolution of the tools, and not everybody wants to use the tools or needs the same tools, right? You kind of came to this point where it's like, once you start building, it gets really exciting to like try different things and whatnot, and even things that you're like, oh yeah, this is perfect for me and I need this and all the rest of it. But you kind of came to the decision that it's like, well, actually maybe this person on the team doesn't need this. And so like making people adopt everything is maybe not the way to go about. But are there like things that you found helpful as a building systems thing that you think a lot more people would benefit from if they just like, or, you know, even on a, I guess, Cole's Notes version of what that looks like to even build?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the toughest part is like, obviously when you are working in a small business or whatever, you have, it's like I said before, it's like working with a team of people who have different personalities, different ways they work, different ways that they see the world, different ways they learn, you know? And so trying to jam your way of working down someone else's throat is not always going to work. I think like the thing that I always like, originally I'd be like, oh, I use, you know, Wunderlist, Todoist. These are awesome. You guys should try them. And then like, they wouldn't really use them. And I'd be like, what are they doing? Like, these things are great for like keeping yourself organized. And then just realizing like, hey, they're working on different stuff. They have a different set of priorities and different things that are causing them stresses in their day-to-day. I think in one of those posts, I detailed, you know, our production manager, who was my buddy Greg's brother, who, you know, he is working mostly not on a computer, mostly in the shop, helping organize, printing large orders, small orders, all these different orders. Stuff's coming in from shipping, stuff's got to go out to shipping, you know. And I just was like, I don't even know if I know what his like day-to-day problems are really. Like I know like I know what he complains to me about, and I know like the grand scheme of like what we do, but like I'm like asking him what his specific set of like, what are the things that you would want to see solved most, or like would just buy you some extra time in every day, and then trying to work backwards from that, right? So he gave me a list of things that he felt like they were getting too much information at the wrong times. And that's when I was starting to play with Airtable. And so it was like, I can start to create all these views for him of orders, and like maybe he only sees the orders that are ready to go. So he's not being bombarded with the stuff that's 2 weeks out, that is waiting for some products to come in from, you know, Montreal or, you know, the other side of the country. And he just gets the opportunity to really narrow in focus on the things that he has to do and that is ready for him.
Yeah, I think it's important. Do you use this method now when you're working with clients, where you're like, instead of coming at it from the, I know your problem, I can solve your problem, it's more like, tell me your problem?
Yeah, I think it's like, I think I need to find a way to get, without like wasting anyone's time, it's like, I need to get to know your business a little bit, right? I'm working with a company called First Session, who's based here in Victoria. They do a therapist's marketplace, built on Webflow, all sorts of Zapier. He has some more advanced stuff that's kind of like way out of my wheelhouse with their scheduling system and billing and everything. But we've been working on a lot of stuff to like help his team who is managing these therapists on their platform. But really it started with like, I just worked on his website for a little bit, kind of like started to understand the business, like what's happening, how are they getting therapists, what are they doing with them once they're in their ecosystem. But then it got to the point where it's like, I'm talking to, you know, his, she's like kind of like a customer service manager, but she like works mostly with the therapist side of things of, you know, helping them update their profiles and and making sure that they run through the steps when they're getting onboarded and everything. And she broke down like what they do and what they do at each specific step. And then just gave me a list of things. She's like, if this would be automated, this would be great, because this is super repetitive, but I have to do it every day. And so getting kind of a breakdown of that. And then again, kind of like when I got that list from the production manager at the screen printing shop, it's like, work backwards from that. It's like, okay, if I wanted to automate these 4 things, it's like, what are we going to do? And so we ended up building, we synced everything via whale sync from the website into Airtable. And then we built an Airtable interface that has all the stages of onboarding a therapist all the way through to like a launch profile, and gives them a nice little interface where it's like, if they want to make updates to, someone's profile, they don't have to go into Webflow and scan through all the things. They can go to this a little bit nicer looking visual interface and make updates to the profile, and they're synced live to the website and do things like that. And so I think it's always about trying to like better understand what their pain points are and then working backwards from that.
Yeah. One of I was just thinking when we were talking about like interfaces and stuff like that, I was just thinking that sometimes the tool doesn't even have the solution yet when we start working with it, right?
Sure.
And then they kind of like change. And so this idea of rebuilding things is also partially because the tech changes, and you have to do that in order to be like, oh, well, this is actually going to work better. I mean, yeah. I think Webflow is going through a ton of it right now with like the introduction of components and like more widely used, and learning how to use that and like how we kind of do that. How do you start, without being overwhelmed with like every tool under the sun? How do you kind of pare it down, or what gets your attention for checking something out? Is there anything in particular that like?
I mean, I think I mostly stick to the tools that I like. And if you look on my website, I probably have a list of a ton of different things that I've dabbled in. But for the most part, I try not to get shiny object syndrome with things that are similar to things I already know. I know that integromat/make.com has its strengths over Zapier, but I know Zapier really well. And so I honestly don't really touch Make. I'm sure I could figure it out if I absolutely had to, but like, it's one of those things where it's like, I try to just kind of pick and choose. And then, I'll be amenable to move to something up, like started with IFTTT, moved to Zapier, but then when those things are working and it's like, they work for 98% of the use cases, I think I'm kind of going to stick with them. I'm sure there's been some Airtable lookalikes, things coming out like that. And I'm like, no, but I know how Airtable works, and they're adding stuff all the time. I don't always dive into it, but I think knowing the base of kind of how the platform works makes it easier to kind of dive into them at a later date. I'd say like what you just said about like Webflow and components. I didn't pay attention to components and all like the changes that they were making there for like quite a while, because I was mostly building sites where like components were pretty structured. We weren't using a lot of props or anything like that. It was just like, this is what our CTA is, and it doesn't really need to change that much. But now I'm working on a little project with like a studio, and we're going to use it. And I've really dove into using props for a ton of different things, like changing styles on custom elements and stuff like that. And so it's like, I know how Webflow works. I knew that props existed in components, but I didn't bother diving into them until I saw an opportunity where it was like, hey, these people need this. I'm going to take some extra time and kind of like brush up on how components are at this point and how many props there are available and everything like that. And then kind of make a plan from there and try to tackle it. And it's taken me probably a little longer than a normal build would have taken me, but it's been a good learning experience to wrap my head around components.
Yeah, I think it's a big change, right? Because for a lot of the things we were doing before, not to get too far into the weeds with Webflow stuff, but we were trying to make CMS do things that it was really not designed to do by adding more fields and doing things and whatnot. And then you come across the component aspect of things, you're like, oh, this is actually just easier to do on the page with the component if they have the ability to do it.
Totally.
Like, that's kind of where it's I've been kind of exploring with it, and then with like the variants and like wrapping your head, because I think you can overcomplicate a lot of it when you start, and then you start to be like, oh, okay, actually this can be pared back. And I think that's part of that, the building thing. I like building like you. So it's like this idea of like, okay, I'm gonna go like test all of this stuff out, and then I gotta clean up a bunch of stuff afterwards because you find better ways. And I mean, I love this community for the fact that there's so many people that are interested to do different things, and they're all willing to share that information. You know, like Alicia and Timothy Ricks, and all of the content that's being put out, especially specifically on components and variables and variants and stuff like that. And they all tie together. So it's, you know, it's very, very cool. As far as I know, you have been getting into, I guess, Xano. Are you pairing that with Wiz currently, or do you use Xano?
Yeah, so I was working on a project with some guys that I've been working with for quite a while on stuff for their website, and we built some stuff out with Xano and Wiz. I actually currently for them am working on using Xano as the backend for a Flutterflow app. So using the same data set that we're using on their website and feeding that into what's hopefully very soon going to be an iOS and Android app for them to distribute to their customers. I love Xano. Like, it's so good. It's so powerful. But it is one of those things where it's like some of these tools, I mean, I think even like going back to when I first got into using Airtable and Zapier, I think the tools have done a bit better of a job. If you signed up for a Zapier account, it kind of guides you through automating something that you might know you want to do. But I remember before it was like, hey, you can do anything. What do you want to do? And you're like, I don't know. Like, it's almost overwhelming, right? And so it's like, you kind of need to have that use case. Like, I looked at Xano before, looked cool, but I was like, what am I going to build APIs for? But then once you actually have the use case of how am I going to do this, and then break it down into the function stack of an API, and I think it gives you like a really good opportunity to kind of channel your learning around something tangible, right? And that's why courses are good sometimes, but sometimes it's like having a real world application where you have to figure out what your end goal is and work backwards from that, and how you're going to get there is like an exponential like learning tool, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, as things progress too, one of the things that I found is like documentation is becoming more and more important. I'm not just talking about like being able to find their documentation and having it be the platforms be good, but like even so I remember what I do, you know, 3 months down the road, what did I do with this thing? How do you handle that kind of end of things? Are you automating any of that? Are you working on the docs for that, or how do you go about that?
So most of the time I'm documenting stuff myself. Sometimes in the tools, one of the things I've actually really enjoyed about Flutterflow is that all of the elements that you can do, you can add notation on them, and it's just part of their system. Because that stuff doesn't end up getting exported to, you know, an iOS like wrapper or whatever. But I think I really enjoy that you can put those kind of descriptions in it. And in Xano, I've been really trying to put like update the descriptions of functions, you know what I mean? So that I know why it's like, this is a Lambda function, and I could look at it and be like, I think I figure out what this is doing, but if someone else looked at this, they would have no idea. But then, you know, updating the description of like, this takes this and does this, or checks for this or whatever, right? And I think putting that stuff in there is great. I haven't had to hand off a ton of these types of projects to other people yet. Stuff at the screen printing shop with like Airtable and Zapier mostly is documented in a Notion site. Lots of screen recorded, you know, like Loom videos of me working through stuff, but then trying to also write it out for people who aren't as visual or who kind of want to read through something. So I think it just depends on where you're going, or where you're and who you're working with. And like, you know, with the therapist marketplace, I know that they have they do a great job of writing up their documentations of, you know, of how they kind of tackle things, and have integrated what I've built into how they go through their things. So that one's been a little bit more hands off. I get to do the things and kind of explain them to them. I'll record a video when it's, you know, a little bit more complicated, and then they kind of take it and kind of implement it into their own documentation and systems.
Cool. I want to talk about a side project, because I don't want to not talk about it. How did Resliders come about? So Resliders is a slider library for people who are unaware. I believe it uses both Slick and
Swiper.
Swiper. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think it was like, in the end, it was originally, it was just like for my own sanity. It was like when Reloom launched their ability to like make your own little components for copy and paste, I was like, man, I have to build these sliders for clients all the time because they always ask for them. And so it was like, build it once, very like unstyled, unstructured as much as possible, you know? And then I just copy that into a Reloom library, and then continue building on the site. And then the next time I built one and I had to do, you know, a 4-panel slider or whatever, copy that, put it into a Reloom library. I think I got to the point where I had 10 or 11 of them. And I was down at Webflow Conf in San Francisco, and I got a taxi with Joe Moore and Connor Finlayson. And he was talking about how he was like, he had this component library that he'd just been selling to people. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like, he's like, yeah, I pre-built all these things and I've just sold it to a handful of people. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool idea. Maybe people would want like my slider library that has like 10 in it. And I was like, well, I got to make it look nice and like put some documentation into it and stuff like that. So I think I got back from Webflow Conf and kind of like chipped away at, you know, making sure I had a full set of like, what are like the most use cases I could find. I was going through Dribble and looking at sliders, and going through Webflow sites and looking at like different slider implementations, and was like, thought I had a pretty good base there. And then, and then I was like, this is kind of a cool experiment into, you know, I've sold my services on the internet. I've, you know, sold products to people via the internet, but I'd never sold like a digital product. And so I thought it was a really cool opportunity to kind of like experiment with that and try out using a lemon squeezy for collecting payments and, you know, figuring out how to gate things and all that.
Yeah, and everything's like an opportunity to learn something, right? I guess part of like even just and having those use cases to be able to do that is really helpful to as you're saying, like so many tools, but like what's my use case that's actually going to make me interested in exploring this tool, right? So
totally. It's like, I never would have really looked at lemon squeezy and like dove into it until I had a use for it, right? And so so like, and I think it gave me like that great it just gave me that great opportunity and impetus to like do something. And it's like, yeah, I made a little bit of money on it. It's like, I know some people enjoy using it. I still get some comments from people about how they use it for their sites and stuff like that. And like, that's so cool. And I wish I was able to spend more time. But I think the other thing is like when I put it out there, and I don't think it's much of a coincidence that around the time that I put it out, all of a sudden I started getting a few more contacts from potential clients about work, and work started kind of coming my way. And I'm like, I've never asked or directly attributed that to, you know, that, but I think it's like, oh, your name got put out there a little bit more. This showed up, someone shared this, and like things kind of steamroll on another side of the business for me from there.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's instead of, you know, necessarily putting yourself out there in the social thing, it's like just doing the work, and then because the work is good, which again is part of going back to like where you know your base values kind of seem to be in that is kind of the method, right? That is your method, is like do the good work, you know, have people refer you because of the good work, and you know, and that's the aim. I know you refer to yourself as a tech generalist. it sounds like there is some more specifications. Like obviously you're picking the tools a little bit more. Like you like exploring, but how does that work compared to being like, so you're not, pitching yourself as a specialist in any particular thing, or because I do notice your website, yes, there is a ton of like, I use this or can use this product, this is the product, like there's a very long list, but how does that work in practice?
I think it just like, I think it's in a way it's its own niche, right? Like being a Webflow developer kind of pigeonholes you into a niche of like, I develop sites for Webflow, like clients or whatever. And therefore you're probably not going to get as many more broad requests from clients, but you are going to get stuff about Webflow. I think the tech generalist angle is its own niche. Is like, I think I really enjoy working with smaller companies that are either just starting or kind of like in that early growth stage. And I can provide, especially the type of companies that I'm working with, which are generally on the tech side, but they're not in the traditional tech world. They're not raising venture capital. They're not building very technical solutions. It's more kind of this middle ground of like, we're leveraging technology to help real world problems or these things, or, and I think the cool thing about it is like, you get this broad set of different types of businesses that I get to like dive into and learn about. But then also I can provide a kind of like a partnership where it's like, you know what, I can help you with that and that and that. And like, if you have an idea about something you want to tackle in terms of some automations on your side, I'm going to help you with that. Am I the world's best automations expert? Probably not, but I think I have like a pretty good grasp on all these things and how we can work these things together and figure out a way that works for your business to help you grow without, having to hire a ton of people to do a bunch of stuff, or without having to spend a ridiculous amount on some crazy custom technical solution now, where, you might get there in a few years, like the therapist marketplace. At some point, he is going to have to build a real application, I think, that is going to encompass everything. But it's like, he, like, without taking on, VC tech funding and stuff like that, that's probably just like, he's going to do it in the right way where he can scale his thing up until it gets to the point where it's like, we are going to have to build this, this actual like full on tech product.
Right.
And then they'll hire someone else, because that's not what you hire a tech generalist.
That's what and that's fine, right? I think where we have our niches and our spots, and knowing that, we could talk for so much longer, but I'm going to bring Maggie and Penny back in because we are at the time. And if anybody's got questions in the chat, now is the time to post them.
I went fast.
Maggie or Penny, do you have any questions?
Hey.
No, I guess like I'm actually curious about lemon squeezy, but for like selling products. But I don't like, I guess that's maybe part of a longer conversation, maybe offline. I don't know. How was your experience with it?
Yeah, I think it's a great platform. There's obviously always some like limitations. If you've used Stripe before, though, I think it has a lot of the tool set without like the really technical side of the tool set.
Yeah.
And then just the whole merchant of record service is so awesome. Like when you're a solo person or a small business who wants to sell stuff overseas, I don't have to worry about collecting that for every European person who bought, something here, or worry about my thresholds of state taxes in Delaware because I sold above the amount to that specific state or whatever, right? And so I think like that is worth the little bit more cost that comes with it than a standard, a Stripe, PayPal or whatever. That 2.9%, I think theirs is 5 plus a transaction fee.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I didn't know about that. But you're making a good case there.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where it's like, I know people gripe on credit card fees and stuff like that. yeah, it'd be great if they were cheaper. But I've always been if it makes something easier on my end, that it automatically collects it and compiles it to me, or this one, it automatically collects payments, it pays me out, and it files all my taxes on behalf of me, so I don't have to worry about making my accountant figure out how to pay VAT for, you know, the $500 that I sold to the EU. Yeah, like that type of stuff is just well worth it.
Okay, I'll look into it. Jeff has a comment. I don't know if you want to comment on that one. Any advice for people who are starting in Xano?
Man, I think like if you had no like true end goal of what you're going to get out of it. I mean, I did Glenn McElhinney's course, and I found that to be great because his course was what is it called? It's Live the Flow Life or something like that. It is a Webflow Wiz Xano course, but the whole thing was he had an end, like we're going to build a e-commerce store that has customer login and tracks your purchases and integrates with Stripe. And so it's like, unlike some other courses where they're like, oh, we're going to teach you about Xano and then we're going to teach you about Wiz. It's like, hey, here, we're going to get here and then we're going to work backwards and figure out how to like each step of the way go through. And he has like a full set of templates for Webflow, Wiz, and Xano and then he has a bare bones set that is like, oh, you're going to have to do a little more work on these. And I just found that really good as having like a tangible thing that I'm building to actually work through. Other than that, I think you just need to figure out like what you're going to like try to use Xano to do something, right? Like whether that's like, I mean, I think one of Glenn's like first examples was like there's a free Star Wars API where you can pull in like the Star Wars planets and the characters or whatever. And it's like, hey, like find that and then use it in Xano to like spit out the data how you want it to, and then throw it onto a Webflow site and just see how that works. Or even just see how like pulling in this data, using the function stack to like manipulate it how you want it, and then spit it out at the end is like kind of like the best way to do it. But I always find it really tough to dive into those things. Like I said, with like Zapier and Airtable, they're like, hey, you can build anything. And you're like, I don't know what I want to build, you know, like even some of these newer like AI product development tools, like, you know, V0 by Vercel, they're like, hey, you can build anything. And you're like, what do I do? Like, I don't really know where to start. And so having something at the end to kind of work backwards from is going to become, I find, the best way to work through it.
Yeah, I think that's why most people start out and just build a job board, because they're relatively easy, but then there's a million job board apps out there nobody's using. But at least it is a starting point, because it's hard to learn something new when you don't have any reason to learn it, or like a structure that you're trying to create with it. Otherwise you're just sort of like, okay, I can grab this and I can do this and I can make this connect yay, right? Having having an actual project of some kind, right? Whether it's personal or otherwise, it's tough.
To your point, Penny, I think that the having the project is great. If it's something you're like interested in, because I've done like some of these JavaScript courses and stuff like that, and it's like build this entire thing, and it's like I don't even remember what I did to build this entire thing because I wasn't like I didn't have a purpose for it. And so that's where I think it's interesting to be like, yeah, just like when you're playing around with it, find something you're actually interested in, and it doesn't really matter what it is, but like make it mean something to you. I think is part of that too, right? Because it will help with the retaining of that.
Yeah. Chris, if you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing? Just sort of.
I honestly have no idea. I went to university in kinesiology with the expectation that I wanted to be a physiotherapist, and obviously not gone down that route at all. But I feel like if I hadn't kind of taken the opportunities to do kind of the entrepreneurship space, I probably would have kept going down that that space. And maybe I would have roundabout wayed my way into entrepreneurship because I think a lot of physiotherapists, you know, run their own clinics or whatever. And so might have got there, but yeah, that's maybe what I'd be doing.
Right. And
likely, yeah.
A lot of us know, some of us more so than others, how difficult it is to get yourself to do the things you have to do, right? And especially when they're not things you love doing. So, how do you motivate yourself to get up every day and do what you got to do?
I think like I talked about, like with like time management is like just knowing where you've got to get things done and then kind of breaking it down from there. I am the hilarious thing. I am like tech forward, but I am old school in that I have a daily to-do list or like a 1 week to-do list, and I just map out everything and I color code it by like how hard the task is. So like green ones are easy, yellow, orange, I barely know what I'm doing. I'm going to have to figure it out. And then at any given time, I can kind of look down at it and be like, okay, these are some things that need to be done by these days. But, you know, if I'm feeling a little tired or unmotivated, I'm going to go rip off a couple of these green ones because like they are almost mindless. And then, and then, you know, when I have a little bit more of that, you know, mental energy, it's like, hey, maybe I'm going to work on that orange one or the yellow one or whatever. I tried to avoid using red just because it felt like very scary, but yeah, so I think like that's my system. I don't know if that would work for everyone, but like I think it's helped me kind of avoid that like procrastination or like, you know, I'm gonna keep putting that off. It's like, no, I'm gonna tackle what I have like the mental capacity to do right now. And you know, I have 2 young kids. Sometimes my mental capacity is not very high. I didn't get a great sleep, someone was sick, whatever. And so I think just being aware of that and then figuring out what you need to do and what you can do and getting those things done.
Right. That totally makes sense. I think it's really helpful for everybody to hear how each of us, you know, sort of handles that. That stuff as you know, as somebody who has to motivate yourself as opposed to having a boss hanging over you. It's one thing, you know, if you have a client project, but when it's stuff you also want to, you know, that's more a personal project, that can be tough. So
I think like right now I've been talking to Tony about this for a little bit where I've been been digging into a lot of those type of personal things because I've been busy with some client work and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I think May is going to slow down a little bit, which is going to be nice. And I can play around, but Tony's been playing with all these AI tools and he's like, check this out, check that out. And I was like, I can't right now. Like I want to, it's cool, but I can't. And so I'm excited for that. But like, I think also just recognizing that and just, you know, you go through, when you're kind of a freelancer, you go through this roller coaster and you kind of got to ride it. And like, sometimes there's these points where you're super busy and slammed and it's crazy, but like, there's also going to be the points where it's slower. And I have to freak out in those points because I'm like, hey, this is time for me to explore Xano or play around with whatever Tony sent me in my iMessage today. And then at the busy times, it's like, hey, I can't just go play with this thing. Like I can't do that. I've got these things.
Yeah. Cool. Great. Thanks. Okay. So.
Wow, that just flew by today.
It did, didn't it? Wow.
Yeah, I think if we don't have any more questions, maybe we could wrap it up. So thank you so much, Chris. How can people find you online?
Like Jeremy said, I'm not the best at being online. I think I check in on Blue Sky the most. So at chrisabra.co, or my website is on there. You can send me an email. If you ever want to chat, I do have like a calendar link that I can throw to people and we can have a coffee and chat Webflow or whatever. But yeah, that's about it.
Sounds good. If anyone has questions for Chris. And that brings us to the end of our 25th Northern Showcase. Is that real? That's 25? That's
awesome.
Good number. We'd like to thank you all for joining and remind you to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and join us in the NOCO North Lodge and in person for upcoming events. On May 2nd, we have Gum Loop Workshop with Aaron Corenblit, I'm so bad at names. May 9th, AI panel discussion. We're still looking for a second person, but we know Reimar is going to join for that conversation. It should be really interesting. On May 23rd, the Northern Showcase with Mark Ralph. And on May 30th, we're still working on that one, but potentially someone who's following this stream today, if they could check the DM.
Small hint there.
Yeah.
And also, if you're in the Vancouver area, check out our Blue Sky and Twitter feeds, and we posted our social coming up next Wednesday, or at least for some of us, Jeremy, hopefully Chris will be there. Some of us are far, far away, unfortunately. Would love to be there. But get together at the craft beer market in False Creek and just get together with some Webflow friends. And otherwise, visit our website at nocodenorth.com and sign up for our mailing list so you hear about all the latest updates. Follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Join us on Fridays in the Lodge, our cool gather space. Our Lodge hangouts are open to everyone. You do not need to be Canadian. We'd love seeing all our friends come visit. And until next time, bye.
Bye, everyone.